Hello and welcome to Twist List. Today we are looking at 10 ancient battles that ended empires. Most battles are only one of many that help to decide the fate of kingdoms and empires. On occasion, however, there is a battle so epic that its outcome can lead to the complete destruction of civilizations, a decline from which they never recover, or their handing over to a greater force. Here are 10 ancient battles that ended empires, destroyed armies, and changed history. The fifth spot on the list is occupied by 207 BC. The Battle of Mabay, or the Battle of the Northern Desert, was a hard-fought military campaign led by the Han dynasty against the Xiongnu, a nomadic tribe. The Xiongnu were barbarians to the Han, who had maintained a contentious relationship over the years due to the security of their northern borders. Xiongnu's strength had increased following the fall of Qin and the Chinese Civil War, but the Han launched an offensive to challenge their strength. A force of 300,000 men and 140,000 horses attacked a much smaller Xiongnu force of 100,000 soldiers and 80,000 horses. The victory was decisive for the Han, but they suffered the loss of most of their horses, which took a toll on their economy. The Xiongnu suffered a much greater loss and were never able to recover from their defeat. Within a few years, the Xiongnu would be nothing more than a small group on the list of clans. The Battle of Zama. By September 52 BC, the forces of Julius Caesar were facing a confederation of Gallic tribes commanded by Vercingetorix. In the final engagement between Rome and Gaul, Caesar conducted one of the most tactful sieges in history. With a force of 12 legions, approximately 60,000 men, and 120,000 Gaul-allied auxiliaries, Caesar besieged a Gallic force nearly 4 times the size of his. The battle itself is considered to be one of Caesar's greatest military achievements due to his use of a circumvallation around Edessa. He ordered the construction of numerous, heavily fortified forts to encircle and blockade the city so that he could starve out the Gallic forces. His investment paid off, as the Gauls failed to break the Roman defenses despite numerous attempts, further weakening themselves. At the third place we have, by the end of the battle, Caesar's conquest of Gaul created a political crisis in Rome. The siege of Edessa ended Gallic independence from Rome and won a substantial by members of the Roman Senate, which sparked a second civil war declared by the Second Triumvirate of Mark Antony and Octavian. The forces of Brutus and Cassius fought their final battle against the Triumvirate at Philippi in 42 BC. The battle was split into 2 fronts, which saw Antony face Cassius and Octavian against Brutus. Antony made short work of Cassius and defeated much of his army. Cassius committed suicide on the false report that Brutus' forces were likewise destroyed, even as those men were forcing their way into Octavian's legions camps. Antony joined Octavian, and the two overwhelmed Brutus, who committed suicide in defeat. With the last remnants of the old republic destroyed, the Triumvirate took control of Rome, which soon became a new empire under Caesar Augustus, 119 BC. If the Roman Republic and Empire were known for anything, it was their rapid and continuous expansion throughout Europe and Asia. It took mighty armies of unregulated barbarian tribes to put much of this expansion to a final halt in AD 9, after the Battle of Teutoburg Forest. The battle was the result of an ambush made by an alliance of Germanic tribes, who attacked and completely destroyed 3 Roman legions and their auxiliaries. The blow was devastating to Roman morale, and despite several successful incursions in the following years, Rome never again attempted to defeat the Germanic tribes north of the Rhine. The Battle of Teutoburg Forest is remembered as one of the worst defeats in Roman history as well as a turning point in their military strategy of northward expansion. And finally, at number 1. The Siege of Edessa. Roman and Persian forces clashed in a devastating defeat for the Romans at the Battle of Edessa in AD 260. Under the command of Emperor Valerian, the Roman army of 70,000 men attacked the Sassanid forces under the command of Shapur I, king of the kings. The entirety of the Roman army was defeated and captured, including Emperor Valerian, the first time such an event had occurred in Roman history. Rome never fully recovered from their defeat at Edessa, which had long-lasting impacts on the political climate of the empire. The defeat was won in a long series of crises that afflicted Rome during the 3rd century, which ultimately led to the creation of the Western Roman Empire in 285. Eventually, the Western Roman Empire fell, and Rome continued weakly into the 5th century after the Eastern Roman Empire, aka the Byzantine Empire, rose to power in 330.
The first recorded use of rudder technology in the West was in 1180. Chinese pottery models of sophisticated slung axial rudders, enabling the rudder to be lifted in shallow waters, dating from the 1st century have been found. Early rudder technology, c. 100 AD, also included the easier-to-use balanced rudder, where part of the blade was in front of the steering post, first adopted by England in 1843, some 1,700 years later. In another naval development, fenestrated rudders were common on Chinese ships by the 13th century, which were not introduced to the West until 1901. Fenestration is the adding of holes to the rudder where it does not affect the steering, yet make the rudder easy to turn. Harnesses have been used. This innovation finally enables European torpedo boats to use their rudders while traveling at high speed on the neck of the horse, thus limiting the full strength of the animal. In the late feudal period, 4th century BC, there is pictorial evidence, from the Chinese state of Chu, of a horse with a wooden chest yoke. By the late Han Dynasty the yoke was made from softer straps and was used throughout the country. By the 5th century, the horse collar, pictured above, which allows the horse to push with its shoulders, was developed. This critical invention was introduced into Europe approximately by 970 and became widespread within 200 years. Because of the greater speed of horses over oxen, as well as greater endurance, agricultural output throughout Europe increased significantly. At the third place we have porcelain. Porcelain is a very specific kind of ceramic produced by the extreme temperatures of a kiln. The materials fuse and form a glass and mineral compound known for its strength, translucence and beauty. Invented during the Sui dynasty, but possibly earlier, and perfected during the Tang dynasty, 618 to 906, most notably by Tao Yue, circa 608 to circa 676, Chinese porcelain was highly prized throughout the world. The porcelain of Tao Yue used a white clay that was found on the edge of the Yangtze River, where he lived. By the time of the Sung dynasty, 960-1279, the art of porcelain had reached its peak. In 1708 the German physicist Schönhausen invented European porcelain, thus sending the Chinese monopoly. Spot is the picture above is a tea bowl with black glaze and leaf paper was an early invention of China. 1127 to 12 accounts of using hygienic paper was during the Sui dynasty in 589. In 851 an Arab traveler reported, with some amazement, that the Chinese used paper in place of water to cleanse themselves. By the late 1300s, approximately 720,000 sheets per year was produced in packages of 1,000 to 10,000 sheets. In colonial times in America, late 1700s, it was still common to use corn cobs or leaves. Commercial toilet paper was not introduced until the 1857 and at least one early advertiser noted that their product was splinter-free. That paper was invented by the Chinese as well known today by Pylon C50 to 121 AD, trivia and it is one of the great Chinese inventions that the Romans used a sponge tied to the end of a stick, which may have been the origin of the expression to grab the wrong end of the stick. In 868 the first printed book, using full-page woodcuts, was produced. About 100 years later the innovations of Bai Sheng, pictured above, 990-1051, were described. Using clay-fired characters he made reusable type and developed typesetting techniques. Though used successfully to produce books, his technology was not perfected until 1298. By contrast, Gutenberg's Bibles, the first European book printed with movable type, were printed in the 1450s.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, then please hit the subscribe button.
Using metal type until the 1490s.